everyone, and welcome back to the Crafty Yellow Camper. And today I'm going to show you a Z-fold card made with the new sunflower stamps, Celebrate Sunflowers, which is this. Firstly, I must apologise for my last couple of videos. I didn't realise until after I'd uploaded them that I'm a little bit out of screen on a lot of them. So if any of you need to see anything that you couldn't see properly in the video, then let me know and I can post a picture on my Facebook page or my Instagram page, which are also the Crafty Yellow Camper. Okay, so let's get started. So the new ink colours aren't actually available yet as ink pads, or they weren't available when us demonstrators could do our pre-order due to some manufacturing issues. They are available now, so now the annual catalogue is live. I'll be putting in an order for the colours, but I did get the ink colour papers and a couple of sweets. This Celebrate Sunflowers one is part of one of the sweets that I got, and it does come with some 6x6 designer series papers, which are called Flowers for Every Season, and it is literally, I'm just going to give you a quick flick through because I did do this in my unboxing video, which you can go back and watch if you want. So I'm just giving you a quick flick through. There we go, that's one side, which this is Cinnamon Cider, this is Bumblebee, this new green is Just Jade, and then if I turn that stack over and flick you back the other way, this is Misty Moonlight. And then you can see these really quite bright ones. This new, this bright pink is Magenta Madness. So there's lots of floral images on that side, a few stripes. And you've got tulips for spring, roses, some Christmassy papers with some poinsettias in there. Lots of beautiful papers. Those are available now, so let me just move those to one side. So I've chosen to use some of the new papers, and we're going to use the largest sunflower stamp, which is this one here. Now you do need quite a large block for it. It fits on our largest block that we carry. It's a little bit too big for the next size down, but just to let you know, you will need a large block for that. Okay, so I have mounted it onto my Stampin' Up today because I want to show you a technique for getting some different colours. So I really like that Cinnamon Cider colour. I don't have the ink, and I really like the dark coloured sunflowers rather than just the bright yellow ones. So what I've done is I've blended 3 different colours of ink that we do, or that I currently have, to try and get a darker colour. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start off first of all with some early espresso, and I'm just going to give that a very light, because we don't want, you need to be very light on that. We don't want too heavier amount of colour. As I said, I've got the piece of cardstock in my Stampin' Up. Now I am committing a cardinal sin here in so much as I've got my foam mat in, but I didn't realise it was in until we started videoing. And you shouldn't really have the foam mat in when you've got a rubber stamp like this one. They're only really meant for photopolymer. Now you can see the middle of that hasn't come out, so I was obviously a little bit too light. But again, the beauty of this is that because it's positioned in the Stampin' Up, you can go back over, add a little bit more ink, and then press down where you've missed. There we go, we've got it all mainly, that will do. I went in with the corner of the ink pad. So that's our base colour, so you're not really going to see that anyway. And then we're going to go in with some pumpkin, no, sorry, I was going to do pumpkin pie. This is terracotta tile. Make sure you wipe your stamps over in between, particularly if you're going from a darker coloured ink to a lighter coloured ink, which is what I'm doing here. So then we're going to add some terracotta tile, and we do want this to show a bit more. So I've given that a little bit more of an ink up. I'll give that a good press over. You just have to be careful you don't break your plate if you've got the foam mat in, which is why I said you shouldn't really with these rubber stamps or cling mount stamps. Okay, and we're going to give that a wipe over again, because this time we're going to go in with crushed curry. Okay, give that a good inking. So that's our yellow Okay, give it a good press down. There we go, and we've got a bit of a blended colour there. It's a blend between the orange, the brown and the yellow, and you could use other colours or only use 2 colours, but I've gone for 3. And then what we're going to do, I'm going to take this out of the Stamparatus so I can get rid of that off my desk. You have to be so careful, the magnets jump towards each other. Okay, I'm just going to give this a wipe just to get off any ink so that if I go to use it again I don't forget. Okay, and our Simply Chamois are great for wiping these over in between. Okay, so I'm not going to die cut that one because you don't need to see me leave the desk and go to the die cutting machine. But I am going to give you a tip. What I've actually found is it's a little bit of a nightmare to line this die up purely because it's so similar shaped. But what I've found is that this edge that has the extra curved over petals towards the middle of the sunflower, I've laid that onto my die and I've used a Sharpie just to mark a couple of dots. Now it might wear off after a little bit of use, but for now, and then you can, I know then that I've got to put my 2 dots towards the right hand side of the cardstock, roughly in the middle, and you can see there that that then lines up like that. Okay, and then you can die cut it. Now just to give you a tip, in the new annual catalogue, those of you that have already had a look may have noticed that we've got some new die cutting machines, and Stampin' Up have taken on board the issues that some of us have had with the magnetic plate for the original Big Shot, in that it's made of sections of magnets, so sometimes your metal dies jump about and you end up having to tape them down, in which case what's the point in having a magnetic plate? And they have addressed that with the new die cutting machine, and the new magnetic plate is 1 sheet of magnet, so you won't have that trouble. So if you're in the market for a die cutting machine, then I can recommend that one. Okay, so this is one that I stamped earlier, and you can see it looks quite brown. I've obviously got more of the early espresso in there than I have of the terracotta tile, but that's not too much of an issue because we're now going to do some colouring. So I've got my crushed curry ink pad, and this is an old style ink pad, so you can turn it over and give it a good press and then open it up, and you'll see that I've got ink inside the cartridge. Now it's not as easy with these newer ones because they're thinner, they're not made the same, so you have to give it a really good press, but you can still do it and you will still get some colour. So what I'm going to do, I'm now going to use one of our blender pens. Now this is an old one, it's got a little bit scrubby on the ends, but you get 3 in a pack. Just make sure that you give it a bit of a scribble to get off any colour that you had, and I'm just scribbling that on my chamois off camera, or maybe on camera, I'm not sure which. Okay, right, so we just pick up a bit of colour. I'm hoping you can see that. Yeah, pick up a bit of colour, and then we're just going to go in and colour the petals, and because our inks are water based, you can sort of blend it in with the other colours that we've already stamped. And you could do this with a blender pen, you could do it with an aqua pen, because again our inks are water based, so they will move about a bit if you apply some fluid to them. You could go in and do this with watercolour pencils. I've seen an absolutely fantastic tutorial by Amanda Charlesworth, who's Scrimping Mummy. She actually did this with watercolour pencils, and she used 3 different shades. I think she used 3, possibly 4, of watercolour pencils. But that is a little bit more time consuming. And I've got a lot of these cards to make, so this is why I'm using the blender pen. Okay, so please excuse me while I work my way around the flower. I wasn't intending for you to see me do the entire thing, to be honest, because you all know how to colour. So while I'm just working my way around with this crushed curry, if you can just hum a little tune, talk amongst yourselves, think about what you're having for tea, Leave me a comment about what your favourite lockdown crafts have been. You might decide to click the subscribe button, which would make me very happy. And if you do click the subscribe button on my YouTube videos, if you ring the bell underneath and choose your preferences, that will notify you each time I upload a video onto my YouTube page. I've been a Stampin' Up demonstrator for coming up for 7 years, but I've not been doing YouTube videos for very long. I hate the sound of my own voice, and it took a bit of a push. I'm also technically unable, so it's been a bit of a learning curve, learning how to upload onto YouTube. And if anyone's interested in giving me any lessons on how to actually edit my videos, I'd be more than welcome for your advice. More than happy, I should say, for you to give me some advice. I've loaded iMovie onto my iPlayer, but that's about as onto my iPad, and that's about as far as I've got with it. So there we go. So I've worked my way around and coloured that in, and you can see that adding that crushed curry then adds a little bit of depth to it. And then what you can do is go back in with the terracotta tile. Now you need to be a bit careful about this because the terracotta tile is quite a dark colour. So I'm just scribbling off my blender pen onto my chamois, and you just want a tiny little bit of this colour. And I'm just putting a little bit into the bottom section of the leaves, or petals I should say, where they would naturally be darker. It just takes a little while to sort of blend it in. You can see I've not done a very good job on some of it. You can give it sort of a bit of a mix about in the palette. If you haven't got very strong wrists, a couple of my ladies have commented on this before, if you haven't got very strong wrists and you really find it hard to push these newer style of ink pads to get them to create this well in the lid, the other option you can do is to open up the pad and just press it lightly onto something like a silicone sheet or an acrylic block, which will then give you a bit of ink to work with, rather than straining your wrists or hurting your wrists trying to push on the back of these ink pads. I'm just going around making sure that I've blended any hard edges. We don't want any harsh edges. Okay, I think we're almost there. These blender pens are really quite good value. I've had mine for absolutely years, and although they do get a bit like a scrubby felt tip on the end, when you're doing this kind of colouring, it really isn't an issue. As I said, you can use them with our inks, with our watercolour pencils as well. Anything that's water-based, basically. Actually, they're really good for using with the watercolour pencils, because then you're not saturating your cardstock if you're not using watercolour paper. I quite often like to watercolour on Whisper White because I find it just gives a really nice stamped effect. And by using a blender pen, you're not putting loads of water on. Right, there we go. You can see, hopefully you can see that now. It's just giving that a bit of depth in the middle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over this centre of the sunflower, which would naturally be darker, and a little bit more concentrated colour. There we go, that'll do. And then let's just scribble that off again, or alternatively you could swap to the other end, which is what I'm going to do. And oh, there we go, close up that ink pad, and then I'm just going to go back just to give a little bit more depth with a little bit more crushed curry, just to sort of blend that in. I'm hoping you can see what I'm doing on the camera. Hoping that ink pad isn't too much in your way. And this just blends back that terracotta tile. There we go. We can colour in any bits that we missed the first time around. Just to blend that in. Just a little bit there before. Just get that now. Something very satisfying about colouring, isn't there? I know some people really enjoy it and other people hate it. I actually quite enjoy it. Well, I have to confess to having quite a stock of those adult colouring books that I've done like 1 or 2 pages in, because there never seems to be enough hours in my day. Especially now COVID-19 restrictions have been lifted a little bit and I've been able to have some more of my little children that I look after back, whereas before I could only have key workers' children. It gave me a bit more time in the week, which was lovely, but I did miss my children. Right, so that will do for that. So you can see that we've got a nice bit of depth to the middle of that sunflower. I'm not really very happy with the actual middle, so I think what we're going to do is I'm going to go back in with some of that crushed curry. It's too orange for my liking. There's too much terracotta tile in there. Let's just tell you what we're going to do. What you can also do on these ink pads, excuse me reaching over the camera, is have a little spritz on there. Now I haven't got my spritzer to hand, so I'm just going to squeeze a little bit of water out of one of my aqua pens. Sorry if that's putting anyone's teeth on edge. Right, there we go. A bit more colour just to colour that in, get rid of a bit more of that terracotta tile so it's not so orange. You can pick up a little bit off the ink pad, but that's not massively recommended because it can leave light spots on your ink pad. Okay, right, that's better. Prefer that. Okay, so in the true form of Valerie Singleton from Blue Peter, here's one I coloured earlier. And to finish the card off, what I've done is I've created a Z fold base. So this is half, hopefully you can see that, this is half of an English A4 sheet. So half of, if you're in America or Australia or Canada, half of a sheet, cut lengthways, folded in half and scored, and then folded back on itself and scored again to make that Z fold. And then I've cut a panel to go on the front, and then a panel of that lovely Flowers for All Seasons paper just to go over the top. Now on this sunflower, I made a bit of a mess of that corner. So what I've actually done, rather than just bin it after I spent ages colouring it, I've cut in to some of the petals, and I've stamped and die cut some of our leaves from the same set. And what I'm going to do is just position those leaves behind to cover up the worst of my boo-boo. I think we'll put that one in like that. There we go, that covers up the worst of it. And then the final thing I'm going to do to finish this card off is in with the dies. These are some of the dies. So you can see there are these two that look almost like stalks of corn, I think. There is a smaller sunflower image with leaves in the stamps. So that's that one. There's a cut-out leaf. There's the leaf shape that we used for these leaves, which just does the outside. There's this gorgeous sort of filigree cut-out sunflower, which looks really nice, layered up over the stamped image, although it doesn't match up. And then there are these two little leaves here. But what I'm actually looking for this time is this bit, which is actually a centre of the sunflower to go in there. And I've got a few scraps of our new brass foil cardstock, which is absolutely beautiful. And I'm just going to quickly leave that there for you to look at for 2 seconds. Run over to my die cutting machine. I'm sorry about this. I try to avoid doing this when I'm filming. I try to have everything pre-prepared, but I forgot about this bit. So I'm just going to quickly run that through the die cutting machine, and then that cuts and embosses at the same time. And then we've got this gorgeous little brass effect piece for the middle. So that's those. Let's pop that away because those tiny little dies are easy to lose. And then obviously, because you can see the inside of the card, that needs a little bit of stamping. So I've cut a piece of Whisper White to go inside the card. So it's a standard matte size. So it's 14.3 by 10, which will layer up inside that card, and it will also give us somewhere to write. So what did I do with the stamps? There they are. So you can see here we've got this little flower here, and I'm just going to stamp a few of those, but I've got another tip for you with that one, because the leaves actually come from behind here, from behind the flower, and obviously if you stamp it in one colour, the leaves will be the same colour, and that's not what we want to happen. So again, we're going to use our blender pen, and what we're going to do is we are going to go in with some crushed curry, because this is going to be inside the card. We want it to be a little bit lighter. So I'm actually going to swap blender pen because that one needs to be cleaned. Leave that over there. I'm swapping to a new one. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pick up some crushed curry. And you can see why I told you not to do this. It picks the ink up out of the pad. It will come back. And I'm going to use my blender pen to colour in the smaller sunflower. So I'm just working around and putting some yellow, or crushed curry I should say, onto the petals, avoiding those leaves. So we just want the petals and not the leaves. And I'm just going to bring that into the middle. So we get the middle stamped. Okay, and then I'm going to take my green, and I used Old Olive for the leaves. You can see there's already a little bit of ink in the tray from where I've done before. Sorry if that offends anyone, puts anyone's teeth on edge. Okay, and I'm just going to colour the leaf in. Just trying to be careful not to go over the petals. Okay, and I'm using the other end of the blender pen, so I'm just going to go back and pick up a bit more of that crushed curry just to make sure that we got all those petals. And then finally, I'm just going to go in with a little bit of the terracotta tile just to mirror that blending technique that we did in the middle of the other sunflower, and I'm just gently dabbing that in. Put a little bit more on. You can see I've ended up picking up some of the crushed curry, but that's fine. Should just add a little bit of depth, hopefully. Right, okay. And then what we're going to do, we are going to huff. So it's basically, as the ink starts to dry, if we huff on it, then it re-moistens the ink, and that means that we can stamp it. So I'm just going to do that now, so excuse me. And then we can stamp, give it a minute to set in, and you can see that we've got the yellow, the crushed curry, we've got a little bit of that terracotta tile in the middle, and we've got the green on the flowers, and that, or on the leaves I should say, and that is going to sit in my card like that. I'll stick this all together in a minute. So that's our flower. That I've already stuck down, so that's going to go in the inside of our card like that. And then we want to have some form of greeting in there. So what have we got? Congratulations on reaching a whole new level of wonderful. Let's celebrate you. Thanks a bunch. Know that you are loved. So I think we're going to go with let's celebrate you, because that will be useful for a birthday or somebody that's had an achievement. Now, you can see on here that the sticker didn't go very well onto that. So I'm going to turn it the right way up and try and line it up on my grid paper. Okay, and we will do that in the crushed curry. Let's hope it's level. If not, there's always a second side. Okay, so we're going to pop that in slightly off to the left so we avoid that flower. Yeah, there we go. So that's the sentiment and that little flower in there. And then we'll attach that to the inside of the card. There's my snail. I don't know if any of you have heard me say on a previous YouTube, that the snail has actually retired, and we are going to have a new adhesive that works similar to the snail, but unfortunately due to some manufacturing and customs issues with COVID-19 that isn't available quite yet, but it will be soon. So we've got our inside there with our flower, so you can just see the edge of the flower, and then I'm going to stick this flower together. So we're going to put some dimensionals onto the back of this to give this card a little bit of a height. So I'll just find my dimensionals. Obviously it's going in onto that front panel, so we don't need to be too careful about where we stick the dimensionals. Okay, let's just peel the backs off those. It's a good job you can't see my floor, it's absolutely covered in dimensionals. Right, and we're going to put that sort of fairly central in on top of that paper. Okay, and then for the leaves, we're going to tuck those in. And I think what I'm going to do is just put a tiny bit of glue onto the back so they stay stuck down. And that one is going there like that. So I'm just putting the glue on the tips of the leaves because they do stick out over that front panel a little bit. So that's that one. And where did I have the other one? That was over here somewhere, wasn't it? There we go. Yeah, let's just tuck that under there. So it does slightly stick out of the bottom of the card. Just make sure you can still get it in the envelope. And then this lovely brass centre. So I'm not happy with how that colouring went in the middle. I never need an excuse to add a bit of bling. So we're going to add that in there. And I probably should have stuck that down before I put the dimensionals on. There we go. And just as one final thing to finish it, I'm just going to use a little bit of our Wink of Stella just to add a little bit of glimmer into the middle of this flower. Now, Wink of Stella is alcohol based, so you just have to be very careful because otherwise it will make your ink run because the ink is water based. But actually it can work quite well as a blender pen, and if you haven't got any of these blender pens you can always use a Wink of Stella as a blender pen as well. And I'm just going to add a little bit around that brass foil in the middle, and then we'll just highlight the leaves with a little bit of Wink of Stella on there. Highlight the veins in the leaf with a little bit of Wink of Stella there. And I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that on camera, probably not to be fair, but it's given it that real nice little shine in the middle and down on the veins on the leaves. So there we go, that's our sunflower card for today, and a little bit of a colouring technique tutorial for you. Hope you've enjoyed that today. Leave me a comment in the box below to let me know what you think, and I will see you again soon. Thanks for joining me today. Happy stamping.